Hello everyone, welcome to today's class. Let's look at the language focus. 1번. My life is all but over and I'm quite calm. It's quite sad, isn't it? So we are going to look at all but today. All but. Use all but with an adjective to express that some situation doesn't exist just yet, but is extremely close to existing. It is similar in meaning to very nearly or almost. Now, it's quite easy today, which is good for me and you. So basically it means 거의, right? Very nearly. So if we look at here, up at our first example here, it says my life is all but over and I'm quite calm. 내 인생은 거의 끝났고 나는 꽤 차분해. Or if we look at the next example, our team is all but certain to win the tournament. So 우리 팀이 토너먼트에서 이길 것은 거의 확실하다. Maybe we are the favorites to win in the tournament. Maybe we have a very good team. So we are all but certain to win the tournament. Everyone is expecting us to win the tournament. Or our last example, I was all but convinced that Guven was telling the truth, but now I know he lied. 저는 구분이 진실을 말하고 있다고 거의 확신했지만 이제는 구분이 거짓말을 했다는 것을 안다. I was all but convinced. I was all but convinced that 구분 was telling the truth. So 저는 구분이 진실을 말하고 있다고 거의 확신했지만 but now I know he lied. 이제는 저는 구분이 거짓말을 했다는 것을 안다. All but, almost. You can replace all but with almost as well. Our team is almost certain to win the tournament. I was almost convinced that Grooven was telling the truth, but now I know he lied. So yes, almost and all but can be interchanged. Now let's look at number 2. Considering this, it's a fair guess that the words Tamam, Shud were in reference to his marriage. So for number 2, we'll look at it's a fair guess. So use it's a fair guess to express that something is not known for sure, but seems like a reasonable possibility. So what's the word guess? 알아맞히다, right? So when we say more than likely, which is what this is similar to it's a fair guess. It's more than likely or more or most likely. Now, it's a fair guess and more than likely or most likely are very similar. All right, so when we use, it's like 가능성이 높다. It's very high chance. It's a fair guess. They're very similar. They're not exactly the same, but they are very similar in the way. So, as an example, when I see a foreigner or when we see a foreigner in Korea, we think it's a fair guess that they speak English. 한국에서 외국인을 볼 때 그들이 영어를 말하는 것이 타당한 추측이라고 생각하다. It's more than likely that that foreigner would speak English. Not all foreigners, of course, but it's definitely not always true. Or This is a Turkish dish, but it's a fair guess that you can find something similar in Lebanon. So it's a fair guess that you can find something similar in Lebanon. So 이것은 터키 음식이지만 레바논에서도 비슷한 것을 찾을 수 있다는 것은 당연한 추측하다. So even though that this is a Turkish dish, 아마 레바논에서 비슷한 것을 찾을 수 있을 것 같아요. It's a fair guess. Now, let's move on to the language focus quiz. 1번. is all but sure to succeed at Remember we talked about all but? What does all but mean? It means almost. Let's keep it simple. He is all but sure to succeed at life. 그는 인생에서 성공할 것이 거의 확실하다. Or I think that is all but finished. I think that the world is all but finished. So 세상이 거의 끝났다고 생각해요. Maybe because we pollute so much. 3번. I can't prove it, but it's a fair guess that was responsible for A fair guess, remember talking about it's most likely, it's more than likely. So I can't prove it, but let's say that it's a fair guess. He was responsible for the fire. 증명할 수는 없지만 그가 화재에 책임감 있다는 것은 당연한 추측이다. Though we cannot prove it, all the evidence is pointing that he did it. 4번. It's a fair guess that you can find in It's a fair guess that you can find kimchi in every country. These days, kimchi is very popular. So, 어느 나라에서나 김치를 찾을 수 있다는 것은 당연한 추측이다. Because it's everywhere these days. Now, let's look at the further discussion. 1번. Have new advances in DNA analysis helped solve any long-time mysteries in your country? Give details. DNA 분석에 새로운 발전이 당신의 나라에서 오래 미스터리를 해결하는 데 도움이 되었습니까? In Australia, there was a case called the Claremont serial killer. This was all the way back in 1996. 2 women were killed and they couldn't find any suspects until about 25 years later. Police matched a suspect by the name of Bradley Edwards. They matched his DNA to samples that were taken under the fingernails of one of the victims, and that case was solved. And this was only recently, actually. It was quite interesting to read. 2번. What other new technology is helping to solve cold cases that have not been solved these days? 요즘 콜드 케이스를 해결하는 데 도움이 되는 또 다른 신기술 뭐예요? 3D printers these days are creating or recreating people's skulls from a single bone fracture. So, for example, if a police officer or if somebody finds a skull fracture, meaning a part of a skull, but there's no full skull, what the 3D printers can do is recreate the full skull. And then what usually happens after that, after the skull is created, they send it off to artists who then recreate the face around the skull. I've heard that this has solved a couple of cases in the past. Anyway, that wraps it up for today's lesson, which was Tamam, Shud. The pronunciation is difficult. I will see you on the next class.
Sleep it off.
Sleep it off.
Come forward.
Come forward.
Toss.
Toss.
Credible.
Credible.
File.
File.
Reconcile.
Reconcile.